So I'm Alison Cork. I'm a serial entrepreneur. I started my first business when I was actually 5 years old. I discovered that I was the youngest ever female founder of a publicly quoted company. So that was a real moment of excitement in my life. Some would call me Britain's answer to Martha Stewart. I'm all about lifestyle, but I'm also all about supporting other women and championing them to start their own business. I lost about 30 kilos from my heaviest to my lightest. Which is a really, life-changing amount of weight. And I only have one answer, which is there is no magic bullet. But what I can tell you is that your body is so forgiving of all the bad things you've ever done to it. The one thing that absolutely lifts me every day is that I wake up and I know that I am categorically never going to be overweight again in my life. So I'm Alison Cork. I'm a serial entrepreneur. I started my first business when I was actually 5 years old. Some would call me Britain's answer to Martha Stewart. So I'm all about lifestyle, but I'm also all about supporting other women and championing them to start their own business. And I've done a lot of that in the last few years. And my attitude now is that really life does begin at 60. I've had some major changes in my life in the last few years. And for me, the next 40, I think, are going to be the most interesting.
Hey, I'm Di Gillett, and this is the Power of Women podcast. And I can hardly do my introduction after listening to Alison just then, because I've been caught out this week of saying I'm interviewing UK's answer to Martha Stewart, and you've just said that. And also, when you've just said the next 40 years, it's like, yes, we're not going anywhere. So you've completely railroaded my start to the podcast, Alison, because I can't hold back. But we are a platform that showcases and celebrates the strength, resilience and achievement of women from all walks of life, and Alison is the exemplar of that. And I have to admit, when an email landed in my inbox asking if I would be interested in speaking with a London-based entrepreneur, lifestyle expert and broadcaster, which turned out to be Alison, I was pretty intrigued. And then I saw the title of the new book, Fit and Fabulous Over 50, and it was absolutely an instant hell yes from me. Because Alison, as we've already spoken, I think we're in some respects kindred spirits, and proof that reinvention and success have no age limits. So we're going to dive into your journey, your insights, and how you're redefining what it means to be fit and fabulous at any stage of life. Alison Cork MBE, welcome to the Power of Women podcast.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm so thrilled to be reaching out beyond my UK audience, because I really think that what we're going to be talking about is global. There are no borders to the power and the information that you and I have shared and discussed, and that has given us a new lease of life. So I just want to get that message out there.
Yeah, thank you, and I couldn't agree more. Before we get into the fit and fabulous, and drawing back on years in search and trying to understand more about people's background, I know listeners to the podcast, Alison, will be absolutely intrigued about yours. And you've had a fantastic career, as you said, your first business at 5, and I want to know exactly what that was. But one of the other things that I'd really like to tease out and understand more about is, I understand you've also been committed to championing female entrepreneurs. Could we start there?
Yes. So the first business, very briefly, was when aged 5, I had a feeling that if I polished up the conkers that had fallen onto the grass in my grandmother's garden, that I might be able to sell them to my classmates. And I sold them as the best conkers in the world. Like, if you buy these conkers, you're going to win every conker competition. And I did it so successfully that I ended up with a matchbox full of silver sixpences and shillings, as they were in those days, at the end of break time. And cutting a long story short, the teacher saw the matchbox matchbox, panicked, thought I was playing with matches, opened it, then got even more upset because she thought I'd been stealing money. I explained what I'd done, and she said that was even worse because it was morally unacceptable to be selling to your classmates. And I said, well, fair's fair, Mrs. Jackson. They wanted to give me the money. She confiscated the money and put it into the church plate. And about 10 years later, when I was 15, I was walking past a bus stop and I noticed her sitting there. And I said, Mrs. Jackson, do you remember me? And she said, yes. Oh, I do, Alison. And I said, Mrs. Jackson, I remember you too. And you still owe me 5 shillings and 6pence.
Did she smile?
Yeah, I think she kind of got it, yeah. But the point is that I think entrepreneurs are slightly born, not made, which leads me on to everything else I subsequently did, which was to set up and run businesses. And the best way that I can illustrate that is that when I was at university, all my friends, as we came towards our graduation, were going on to be doctors and lawyers. And I just had no clue, and I felt so lost. And because I just knew I didn't fit into those, what looked to me like very, very fixed boxes. But I didn't know what I was. I just knew what I wasn't. And I had an exeat interview with my professor, and she sat me down and said, now, Alison, we've all had a good long chat about you. Do you want the good news or the bad news? And I said, oh, let's start with the bad news, Professor Easterling. And she said, not one of us has any clue what you're going to do in life. And I said, okay, well, that makes 2 of us. What's the good news? And she said, not one of us is worried about you. So it was such a wise thing to say because she'd sort of seen that there was something there. She just didn't know what it was, and neither did I. But it was in starting a business, my next business, which I did because I was in debt. I kept failing my driving test, and with 5 failures, that was a lot of driving lessons. And I needed to make back the money because I couldn't ask my dad. So I started a little publishing guide, and that was my first business. And then it suddenly clicked. You are somebody who solves problems. That's essentially what entrepreneurs do. They find a problem, they solve it, and they hopefully make money in the doing of that. So I realized I was an entrepreneur. And then I went through, my whole career. I've never actually worked for an organization in my life. So I'm surely very unemployable in the best possible way because I just don't fit into that mold. But I ran several businesses, one of which was floated on the London Stock Exchange in 1994. That was a publishing business that I co-founded. At which point, and quite to my surprise, I discovered that I was the youngest ever female founder of a publicly quoted company. So that was a real moment of excitement in my life.
That's brilliant.
And I'm sort of telling the story quite quickly because I've now been around for a number of years. But I then ran several other businesses. And I got to sort of 10, 12 years ago and thought, why is it that there aren't that many women out there running businesses like me? I mean, there are more than there were when I was 20, when there were literally, like Anita Roddick, Body Shop, Sophie Merman, Tyrac. I stopped there. I just couldn't name them.
Yeah.
So there are more, but there aren't that many. And we're now in, 2000 and something. What's going on? So being a curious person, I looked around, asked questions, and what came back was so consistent. It was lack of female role models, lack of support, lack of networking, lack of access to finance, lack of confidence. And I thought, okay, those problems aren't really insurmountable, not really. So I started something called Make It Your Business, which is now a UK-wide networking group where women who run businesses speak in front of women who aspire to run businesses and mentor them on the basis that you can't be it if you can't see it. So that's that. And then most recently, about 3 years ago, again, being curious, I was Googling national days. And, I think I've said this to you before, we have national days in Great Britain for hedgehogs and beer, of course, beer, but not for women. How is that possible? We make up 50% of the population. So I thought, right, well, there's an error. So we're going to have National Women's Enterprise Week. We're going to take a week. And so that now happens every June. And what we do is run an accelerator competition where we give 10 women, 5 startups, 5 scale-ups, fully funded places on a 3-day accelerator, kind of like an incubator, Silicon Valley type incubator in London. And we expose them to the best that Britain has in marketing, finance, pitching, you name it, everything you need to run a business. And that's just my way. I absolutely wouldn't describe myself as a feminist, but it's just my way of redressing what is a ridiculous imbalance, because bottom line, women make up roughly half the population. We cannot bang on about how the economy isn't firing on all cylinders if half of the population who could contribute are not being allowed to fire on their cylinders. Mathematically, it just can't happen. So it's not even a feminist thing. It's not even a nice to have thing. It's just basic common sense.
Yeah. Have there been any significant success stories come out of that enterprise crash course that you've been running?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's just so wonderful. And so we're just now going into the competition launch for this year, and we've asked last year's cohort to give us some quotes. And one came in yesterday saying that as a result of just those 3 days of incubator, her turnover has doubled in her business in the last 12 months. So she's thrilled. She makes a sugar-free ketchup to rival Heinz, which is full of sugar, as we all know, which is just music
you
to
and
my
I
ear.
could yak on about that.
We could talk about that a lot of the time.
Yeah.
But then the lady who won the scale-up section last year, Jenny Wordsworth, who created a reproductive supplement called Ovum, she went on 6 weeks later to get $250,000 investment from Morgan Stanley because she pitched successfully, which was just thrilling. I personally then invested in her business. And yesterday, you couldn't make this stuff up.
Your own private Shark Tank, yep.
Yeah, absolutely. So yesterday I was sitting in Goldman Sachs in London, which is an incredible place. Can't tell you how exciting that building is. Having lunch with the all-female team who run their 10,000 Women program. And the lady to my left was heavily pregnant, just about to go out on maternity leave. And I mentioned Jenny's name, and she just turned to me and she said, "Is that Ovum?" I said, "Yes." She said, "Jenny is the reason that I'm pregnant." She said, "My husband had nothing to do with it." And I just thought, that is
there's the line for the business marketing for the rest of days.
My husband had nothing to do with it. But I just thought, of all the people in all the meetings, the woman next to me is attributing her fertility success to the woman whose business we championed on our course and that I personally invested in. It was like a full circle moment, and it just made me think, this is why I get up in the morning.
Yeah, that is such a validation point. Yeah, I absolutely love that. So is there common character traits that, I mean, you've articulated character traits that you had, and I read, whilst I won't put myself in the same stratosphere of entrepreneurship as you, Alison, there were a couple of things that made me chuckle when you were giving the narrative of the ventures that you had, because almost every step along the way there'd been either a small step of defiance or something that probably challenged the status quo, and I have my fair share of that in my background. Is that a quality that makes a great entrepreneur, and what is the bucket list of entrepreneurial traits?
I do think that there is something almost sort of genetic, which is a desire to ask questions, to be curious, to be dissatisfied with an answer that you don't think is quite right, to like problem solving. So you could sort of flip that on its head and say someone who doesn't like to see things go wrong in life or what they perceive as injustices. And I am a very, very curious person. I genuinely, it's a bit of a sort of, people say, "Oh, I love talking to people." I genuinely love people and find them fascinating. And it's when you have those conversations that incredible things come out, like, this is a problem I've not been able to solve. So I think curiosity, number one. Optimism is essential. If you are not an optimist, I genuinely think you're going to attract negative vibes if you're a negative person. There's that wonderful piece that I read recently as a Japanese scientist who did this experiment with water and words and actually could physically show that when people spoke negatively, the crystals that formed in water and ice were a different shape to those that formed when people spoke positively. It's absolutely incredible stuff. And if you've never seen that, you must look it up, because it totally...
I'll get you to share that and we'll put it in the show notes, because that's fascinating.
It was just mind-blowing, because other than that, you're saying, well, it's just my opinion and I think positivity is a good thing. No, this was a physical manifestation of the difference between positive and negative in words and vibrations, because essentially words are vibrations. So I think optimism is absolutely critical, but only because you're going to come across so many problems in your entrepreneurial journey that if you don't believe you can overcome them, you're not going to. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's not going to happen. And then I think the best entrepreneurs, even if they're not capable of it themselves, they'll get a team around them that can, will then execute with absolute precise consistency. It's about execution. You can take a not great product and execute the marketing brilliantly, and you'll have a success. You can take a great product and market it badly, and you will not succeed. So, how you present that product or service to the world is everything. And we see that so powerfully now on social media. Because I think historically, we probably all thought marketing was done in a very particular way and you had to spend a certain amount of money. And we've now learned from social media that that's not the case. There are people who've bootstrapped billion-pound businesses because they somehow manage to reach an audience and hold them with what they said, hold their interest. And I think that sort of democratization of entrepreneurship is fascinating and will totally change the economic landscape of the entire world, because anybody can now start and succeed. And I think that's wonderful.
Well, that run list, and I'm sure for somebody who believes they've got that entrepreneurial bent within them, and listening to you articulate those character traits, will either be able to tick a box and recognise it in themselves, or potentially recognise where they're lacking. But that, I mean, as a template for entrepreneurial excellence, I mean, that's just fantastic. So thank you for that. And I don't think we can delay any longer, though, about talking about rewiring your second act, and maybe it's rewiring our second act, and being fit and fabulous over 50. But I think we should actually put a line in the sand before we jump into that, Alison. Can we do an age declaration, the two of us? Because I think we'd like to blow people out of the water with that.
So you have just had a birthday, so happy birthday.
Thank you.
And I am 61, about to be 62 in July. But we are both currently exactly the same age.
Same age, yeah. So I think, and this podcast does go up on YouTube, and I do hope people are looking at us as fit, healthy 60-something-year-olds who, if you had a vision of what that looked like, of our generation, what your mother looked like, we look nothing like that. Nothing like that.
So true. I think this has been a really sort of seismic shift between, as you so rightly say, our mother's generation and our generation. So if you were to compare our grandmother's generation and our mother's generation, that differential is not nearly so great. The difference has happened in this generation. And I think for me, the fundamental difference is a mindset shift, which is my expectations of my second act, as I put it. And let's say it's over 50 technically, because we know we can reach 100. We don't yet know that we can easily reach 120. So let's say 50 is your technical halfway mark. I absolutely believe that the mindset shift is my second half can be as good, if not better, than my first half. And that is a totally different way of thinking to previous generations, where I think the acceptance, and I hate that word, but an acceptance that at 50, it's all over. You're going down the other side of the mountain, and it's down. Mm-hmm. It's not even flat.
But that would not enter your mind at this point in your life. It certainly
not
doesn't
anymore.
enter mine. Yeah. That's interesting. You said not anymore. So is it the facing into the transformative change that you've undergone that has changed that, and you didn't think like that before?
Yes, so to add insult to injury, I used to be a restaurant critic, so I still do. I adore food. And as a restaurant critic in my 20s and 30s, I just assumed that my job was to eat indiscriminately. I would just eat everything, and I drink quite a lot too. So drinking a bottle of wine wouldn't be in the least bit unusual for me, just by myself, one sitting at a meal. And this carried on, and then I had children, and then I got into my 40s, and then I got into my 50s, and then the old menopause creeps in. And I got to 57, so relatively recently, and looked in the mirror and thought, I'm not sure about that. I don't look as good as I want to look, and I don't feel as good as I want to feel. And so I'd always been very sort of optimistic and ballsy about what I could do in life. But somewhere along the line, I'd slightly lost control of the health and fitness thing. And actually, when I say lost control, now I understand retrospectively, I was never really in control. And the reason I wasn't in control was because I didn't understand nutrition, food, bizarrely for someone who was a restaurant critic. I mean, that was the first admission that I had to make when I went to a gym.
That would have felt like a slap in the face.
Well, I just felt so stupid because I walked through the door saying, well, I know all about food. That's clearly not the problem. And they said, well, I think it might be. Tell us what you eat in a day, Alison. so I told them, and they said, yes, that's about 85% carbohydrate. We might need to revise that. And then began this process of education. So, joking aside, really the nub of it is that I got to my late 50s, realized I was not in any way, shape or form looking or feeling or operating to the level that I wanted to, because obviously your physical health impacts your mental health, it impacts your mood, as we now know, and your clarity of thought, and all of these things have a knock-on effect on your job, your relationships, your children, everything. So cutting a long story short, having gone to this place where they said, well, what we're going to do before you even pick up a dumbbell is teach you how to eat. And they retaught me nutrition. And then parallel to that, they taught me the power of weight training for women, which we must talk about because it's so important. And in the space of a year and a half, I lost 30 kilos in weight from my heaviest to my lightest, which is a life-changing amount of weight.
And super impressive and clearly doable.
It's doable, and this is the thing. I don't really need or want people to pat me on the back. I want to say it so that anybody out there who, particularly women, who are in their 50s and thinking, it's too late, I've left it too late, I can't change what's gone before because it's 40 years of damage. Not true. Your bodies are the Rolls-Royce of machines. Our bodies are the greatest machine that this planet has ever created. And what always humbles me, and I do actually find it quite emotional, is how forgiving our bodies are. And that counts with smoking, with drinking, and with eating sugar, which we all know is the devil. Or we should know is the devil. And
we're telling you it is the devil.
It really is, and we can talk about that too. But the minute I got my head around that and changed the way that I ate, I was astonished at how quickly my body responded. And, my before photos are out there on the internet, and I'm not embarrassed. I mean, I am embarrassed by them, but I'm not embarrassed by them, because I think if you're going to stand up and have conversations like this, you've got to be prepared to show people where you started. Otherwise, the information is meaningless.
Yeah.
So those awful photos are out there, and I hope what they will do is communicate that I am like any other woman out there who was, at the time feeling a bit crap about herself in her 50s. But you can change that. It's never, ever too late to change. Never.
I'm interested because you've talked about curiosity being an entrepreneurial trait, and clearly you've got that in spades. And you've also talked about how you physically feel better. Has your level of curiosity and that ideas brain bank increased as your weight has decreased and your sugar has left the building?
Yeah, it's really, really fascinating. So I think that my mental clarity is way better than it was 4 or 5 years ago. And that's, I need to put that in the context of I decided on my menopause journey not to take anything. So I've never taken any hormone treatments of any description. So I sort of thought I'm going to go cold turkey. I'm going to battle this one out because I'm just not somebody who's in favor of taking pills and potions and what have you, other than vitamin supplements and things like creatine and stuff like that. So I find that my mental clarity is way sharper than it was. I find that my memory is much better, that I can retrieve information far more easily than I used to be able to, which is, with 1 in 10 of us in this country, in England, suffering from Alzheimer's, and it's a growing and huge problem. It's the biggest killer in the UK now.
Yeah, we're in the same.
Health, brain health, is something we should all be very, very, very aware of. But also, I notice things like my grip strength is now hugely superior to what it was. So anybody on the streets of London who thinks they're going to pinch my phone is going to get a big surprise because I ain't letting go.
But there is a direct correlation between grip strength and brain health. We know that.
There is, and I discovered a fascinating correlation, which is that there is a direct correlation between the strength of your quad muscles in your upper leg and your likelihood of developing dementia in later life, which is fascinating, because people think that to avoid dementia they have to sit doing crosswords all day long. That's actually not the case. It's about moving, it's about exercise. So there is this incredible cause and effect between moving and brain health. And the other thing that I noticed over the last year, and to begin with I thought it was just a coincidence, and now I've realized it isn't, and I've got to look into this in more detail because I haven't quite worked out why it is. When you drop something and your brain says, oh God, I've just dropped something, I'm about to hear it smash on the floor, and you kind of know what's going to come next. A few months ago, I dropped a glass in the kitchen and my brain said, oh, we're going to hear a smash in a minute. And then there wasn't one. And before I'd realized what I was doing, my hand had caught it. And I thought, well, I'm actually not a very coordinated person. So how did that happen? So I thought, okay, that's just luck. That's just luck. But then it kept happening that when something dropped, a pencil, a glass, or whatever it was, I'd catch it. Almost before my brain had worked out what needed to be done, my hand was there. And this has now consistently happened over many occasions, more than I can count.
Yeah, that's super interesting.
So I think it's fascinating. I haven't identified which of the supplements I take might have helped with that, if it is a supplement. So I need to do a deep dive because I take everything from ginkgo biloba for memory to, I take some quite unusual stuff.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, just very interesting, isn't it? But I just think, that's another example of how my machine is operating way more efficiently than it used to.
I tell you another one that I have found, and I was listening to a podcast on aging and life extension styles of strategies, and a neuroscientist said to test your balance whilst you're cleaning your teeth, to stand on one foot whilst you're cleaning your teeth. And I don't know whether you've done it, but I now make a ritual of doing that, and an electric toothbrush runs for approximately 2 minutes, and I can fully balance on one leg while I'm cleaning my teeth without any loss of balance. Yeah.
Love it.
It's a personal, just a check-in every day. And what you do is you alternate legs. So in the morning you'll stand on one leg, and in the evening you'll stand on the other. Yeah.
I love it. That's brilliant multitasking as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Love
yes,
it.
so
Great.
that's become one of my little daily rituals. So which is great. Well, Alison, I think we'll take a quick break, but coming up, what I want to understand is more about this rewiring of your second act and just all the elements that play into that. If you're loving the Power of Women podcast, be sure to jump onto our YouTube channel and hit that subscribe button to ensure you never miss an episode. Alison, can I ask you, the transformation that you have achieved since you looked in the mirror and went not quite so happy, are you surprised at just how far you've come in that transformation?
I am. And I remember the first conversation I had with the trainer, and he said, okay, tell me what your goal is. If you could achieve anything, Alison, what would it be? And I'm going to be very specific here. And I said, well, I don't think I've been 9.5 stone since I was 14 years old. I mean, it'd be amazing to get somewhere close to 9.5 stone. And he looked at me a little sort of quizzically and said, what are you talking about? And he said, look at your frame. It's small. You've just got lots of fat around it, but look at your wrists. They're tiny. And I had spent so long inhabiting this belief that I was just a fat person and was always going to be a fat person, that I had never analysed it or looked at the reality or thought about things like bone structure. And to cut a long story short, when I did my final photo shoot, which they do as a sort of celebration of where you've got to, which is lovely, I was just above 8.5 stone, which is where he said I could realistically and healthily sit. Now, as it happens, I've chosen not to remain there because, and this is a much bigger conversation, the level of focus that would have been required for me to stay there was not something I felt was comfortable on a day-to-day basis. I mean, for a photo
and that's
shoot,
really important.
It's really important because what you have to do as a result of any of these transformative processes is come to a place of acceptance and happiness and comfort. And when I say comfort, I don't mean comfort eating, as in you can go back to eating packets of chocolate biscuits. I mean a place where you wake up in the morning, you look in the mirror and you think there is a strong and healthy person who loves her food, is going to eat 3 good meals today and a few snacks, who's going to be joyful about what she's eating and feel strong and have that strength to go weight training, which is critical.
Yeah, this is not about setting yourself up to be miserable. This is got to be sustainable.
No. So whilst it was wonderful to focus on that goal, to prove to myself that I was actually inhabiting the body of somebody with a frame that really was closer to 8.5 stone naturally than 10.5 or 11 or 12. My happy place, as I put it, is around 9 stone, anywhere between 9.5 stone. I like my shape, my clothes fit, I feel strong, and that's what it's about. If you said to me, you've only got one word you can use to describe your happy place, it's strength.
Yeah, I love that. So what have you given up? Because I think people will be sitting there listening to this and going, how the hell can I do this? And you and I both know you can do this, but actually, if I could wind back, if I said to you, and because people keep saying, and I would suspect you had the same thing, and I'm not sure that I've said on air, I have lost 16 kilos in a period of 9 months, and that was 18 months ago. So I have been this weight now for 18 months, and I know in my own mind that won't ever change. This is where I am going to live, and this is where I'm going to stay. Do you get asked or have it said to you, oh, you're lucky, or do people ask you, was it easy?
Actually, neither. They ask me what was the magic bullet, because they're making the mistake that we all make at some point in our lives, which is to look for a quick easy, so we'll use that word, solution to a long-term problem. And we know that doesn't exist. Okay, it may in some people's heads now exist in the form of Mounjaro or Ozempic. I personally wouldn't touch them with a barge pole.
No.
We do not understand the long-term effects of these drugs.
Couldn't agree more.
I appreciate, because I can say this having been there myself, what it's like to be obese. I was technically obese because I had a BMI of 39. That's high. That is
high.
Yeah. And
today you have a BMI of what?
It's now, well, at my photo shoot it was a bit lower, but it's now about 17.
Yeah. I mean, that's just extraordinary.
Yeah, it's different. It's different.
It's extraordinary.
So what they asked me is, what's the quick fix? And I will never stop saying this. There isn't a quick fix, but there is a sustainable fix that will change your life forever. Pick your battles. Which one do you want?
So if we look at that food lineup, when the guys at the gym said 85% carbs, and you've had your oh shit moment of, do I really know what I've been putting in my mouth? What have you actually given up eating?
Well, in one word, sugar, or in two words, beige food. When people ask me, that is the most succinct answer I can give. Sugar is literally the devil in nutrition terms. That is, when I say that, I mean refined sugar, the granulated stuff that we buy in bags or in cubes.
Yep.
It is linked to what we call the great horsemen, the 4 or 5 diseases that will kill the vast majority of people on this planet: cardiovascular disease, diabetes, dementia, etc. So we cancer. So there are links between all of those and sugar. And to add insult to injury, of course, refined sugar is a relatively new introduction to our diet, by which I mean the last few decades it has increased. And how has it increased? It's increased by sneaking its way into ultra-processed food, which in itself is something which our mother's generation wasn't eating, which is why housewives of the 50s who ate 3 meals a day, including things like suet pudding for pudding, had neat little waists.
Yep.
And they weren't overweight. And back then more people were smoking, and they were probably having a drink.
And you see it when you travel. So I know, even as a kid in the 70s, when I had my first trip to London with my parents was 1979, and there was just the beginning of the influx out of Saudi and that coming into the hotels in London. And you can see it in cultures who didn't have that in their diet, and we can see that in the Asian cultures, or the broader Asian diaspora. And as Western food, which is predominantly sugar-based processed food, has come into their diets, you can see the physical change of a whole generation.
It's so shocking. I remember when I started noticing Oriental people who were becoming fatter and developing skin problems. I noticed
and you
that a lot.
Never used to see it.
Never used to see it at all. And in fact, in Japan, where there is still a sort of some form, well, to some degree, cultural preservation, women there sometimes don't suffer the menopause at all. And that's because of their diet. That is pure and clean, and it's absolutely incredible. So, diet is related to so many issues, and in particular, the introduction and the prevalence of processed sugar. So if we come back to this country, and Australia, I'm sure, very similar, supermarkets, certainly in Great Britain, sell us 96.7% of the food that we eat.
Yeah, we're the same.
In supermarkets, if you just walk around a supermarket, the majority of shelf space is going to be inhabited by ultra-processed foods. Now, why is that? And the answer is very simple. Because there is more profit in a packet of Oreos than there is in an aubergine. That's it.
Yep.
And so you're not going to get the same emphasis on fresh fruit and veg. And I was actually in a supermarket a couple of days ago where I've become very friendly with the staff. And they've been asking me for advice, ironically, working in a supermarket, on what they eat, because they know I've written the book. And she said, well, you know, here we are in the supermarket, where would you shop? And I said, well, that bit there called the veg aisle, that bit there, the fruit aisle, that bit there, the meat and poultry, that bit there, selling the fizzy drinks and the chocolates and the biscuits and the protein shakes. You'll never see me in that aisle, ever.
Yeah, not the
And it was
same.
a really sort of visceral example, because it was in front of us. It's like, if you did a heat map of where I walk when I come into your supermarket, that's where you'll see me walking.
Well, you know that throwaway line of you are what you eat. I mean, I have always been fascinated at the checkout, to the point of possibly almost rudeness, but I am totally fixated in what is in the shopping basket of the person in front of me or behind me. I cannot. I know. And I mean, on a Myers-Briggs, I'm an ENTJ, and I am so far off the J, there's not enough judgment in the world to perhaps capture mine. And if you're wondering what I think, you don't need to ask, because either I'll tell you or it's written all over my face. But so if somebody actually sees me sizing up their basket and it's not full of good things out of the fresh produce aisle and meat and dairy and protein, and it is full of pasta and processed food and lollies, but invariably it is. Boxes of useless cereal that the cardboard box has.
You just said the word. Boxes. A box is going to contain something that is most likely ultra processed.
Yeah.
And when I said earlier, you know, sugar or beige food, what do I mean by beige food? Well, it's the simplest way I can encompass biscuits, pastries, cakes, chocolates, pasta.
You're a
bread.
marketer's nightmare, because beige just kills it.
Yeah, no, listen, I
kills
fully
it.
expect there to be a contract out on me by some of the major. Stop this woman.
Tell me, I'll be interested, because I appreciate that, you know, we're both sitting in marketplaces where cost of living is a major issue.
Gosh,
We've just had a budget come out in Australia which has done nothing to alleviate that, but I'm not sure we're quite as bad as the UK.
Well, ask me again in a few hours. We've got a spring statement today. None of us is looking forward
there we
to
go.
it.
Yeah. Okay. But I'd be interested to know, has your weekly household spend on food and grocery gone up or down in price?
Now, this is fascinating, and I'm so glad you asked this question. It's gone down.
Yeah.
And it's gone down because ultra-processed food is, of course, very expensive. I don't know what you guys pay out there, but in England, for one protein bar, £3.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. It's just stupid. So now I shop very differently. So I go to the supermarket for convenience, because it is close, for fruit and veg and my dairy products, by which I mean my high-protein Greek yogurt, ricotta, and parmesan. I love parmesan.
Which is full of protein.
Full of protein, as you know. Well done. Yes, not many people know that. It's very true. It has as much protein as chicken, which is, I just think, fascinating. So go there for those things. And then I go to our meat market in London, which has been there for 1,100 years, which is amazing, called Smithfield's.
I do know Smithfield's. Yep.
Yeah. I go once every 12 weeks. I go at 4 a.m. with a friend of mine who drives a black cab, who used to work as a meat porter, because he knows his cuts of meat, as they say. And we go off together, and I come back with 3 months worth of meat and poultry. The quality is sensational. The price is super low. And so, honestly, with that, and then ordering my water and stuff off, Amazon and what have you, I bulk buy, my bills have come right down, because what I'm not buying is anything that's processed, which is going to cost more. I've stripped it back. And
no boxes in your pantry.
No, there are very, very few boxes in my pantry, which is why I struggle a bit when people say, or you see them on television in these, talking in these programs, saying, well, it's not possible to eat healthily on a budget. It's like, no, it is.
Yeah,
you bulk
it is.
buy, you prep, you freeze, and people who say, I don't have time, I do understand, because I am a very busy woman, what that feels like to be under pressure of time. But you can shop, plan. On a Sunday, I write my menus for the week, I shop for the week, and I prep for the week. So by Monday morning, I know exactly what I'm going to eat. I know that it's where it needs to be. All I need to do is defrost some of it. And honestly, that makes it cheaper. And it makes, to go back to your earlier point, my likelihood of falling off the wagon far, far less, because I'm not left to these spontaneous decisions of, oh my God, there's nothing in the fridge, I'm really hungry, and now I'm getting really grouchy because I haven't eaten biscuit.
Yeah.
Bang. There's far less chance of that.
And it's a de-stressor too, because it's all sorted. You've addressed it up front. I just find it takes out, knowing what you're going to eat in the household was often a moment of anxiety if you weren't organised, and I find that has all gone. But I suggest your fridge probably looks like ours, of loads and loads of containers.
Yeah. Yes, you're absolutely right. So mine is, I have one shelf for my berries, because I eat berries every single day. I'll have one for the uncooked meats and fish and poultry, one for dairy, one for cooked food. And then there's a door for condiments and what have you. I have quite a small fridge actually, but again, if you're buying what you need and just not sort of random purchasing, you actually have less food in the fridge, because it's all,
and very little waste.
But I can't bear food. I can't bear it. I find it so offensive.
So that would dispel a whole lot of misnomers that people would have about, to your point, and you've raised it, that I can't afford to go down this path. And the people who are lined up in Australia for fast food takeaway at McDonald's or God knows where else, and I have to say I've only ever eaten a McDonald's hamburger once in my life as a university student, as a dare. So it's never been in my psyche to eat that way. But I imagine it's like the person who smokes. The price of that's probably just gone up and up and up and up and up, where that is now an expensive way to eat, where they could have had a bowl of rice and vegetables as a stir fry for a fraction of the price and 20 times the benefit.
Oh, goodness me, yes. And living in London, where prices are even higher, one cupcake, it's a random example, but it's a fairly good one, can now cost you £5. Well, what are we thinking? Why would you spend £5 on literally, you may as well go into the cupboard, get your refined sugar out, get a teaspoon out, and just shovel 6 teaspoons into you. Why not?
Yeah. So let's get on to this correlation between food and exercise. Can I just start with your transformation? Do you know how much of your success was derived from changing how you eat versus changing how you exercise?
Yeah, that's a really easy question to answer, and it's true for anybody. 80% of your weight loss journey will be about what you eat. The 20% is the exercise, which will tone, refine and shape your body, and in the case of weight training, give it strength and resistance and stamina. But to lose weight, you have to focus on what you're eating. Or to put it very simply, you cannot out-train a bad diet.
Yeah.
You can knock yourself out in the gym on those cardio machines till you fall to the floor. If you do not change the way you eat, you will not lose weight.
Yeah. So how much exercise are you doing? Tell us about that.
So not as much as people often think. So I go to the gym for 3 weight sessions a week. and
Same.
I like to rest in between. I like walking, so I have to preface this with I walk every day about 15,000 steps, sometimes 20,000. I don't have a car. I gave it away. No point in London. So I walk every day. I do 3 weight training sessions a week, and I've come to really love Pilates. So now I do a Pilates session after the weight training session. But my trips to the gym are 3 a week because I'm sandwiching the Pilates and the weights together.
Which is not a huge commitment. And how long are you training per session?
So 45 minutes, weights,
same.
3 times, and 45 minutes Pilates.
And are you enjoying it?
I love it. I absolutely, when I first started weight training, because I was overweight, it was hard. And that's why I went to a gym where I knew that I would be held accountable and pushed so that I saw it through. And that was absolutely instrumental in my success. I think I think it is a tough journey just to do it all on your own. And I would always say, buddy up with somebody if you can.
Yep.
So the first bit, I can't honestly say I enjoyed it. It was a shock to my system. That's probably the best and most honest description. But then I just began to fall in love with the feeling it gave me and the endorphins that you get 40 minutes after you've had a session and you leave and you just feel on this incredible high. And I've come to love the effort. And most of all, I love the freedom and the shape and the look that it gives me and all the attendant benefits of that. It's something as simple as, okay, I'll give you a specific example. I went to an event last night and it was at a very large bank. And banks can be quite intimidating places. And I knew this room was going to be full of some quite high-powered people. And I thought, okay, how are we going to do this? Because I'm going on my own. I thought, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to wear my favourite funky trousers. Everybody there will be in a grey suit. So I'm going to wear funky trousers, which are my 1970s sort of psychedelic flares. And I'm going to wear my top that exposes my arms, because my arms are my power.
Same. I'm loving this outfit.
And it's my favourite outfit because it flatters me, it makes me feel fabulous, and then I put a little bit of fake tan on my arms, a little bit of shine, so that the musculature is looking its best. And I'm being really honest, I do it quite consciously, did it deliberately, because it was my way of sashaying into that room, thinking, yeah, I'm looking my best.
But you've also raised a point, because most women over 50 would be focusing on an outfit that covers their arms.
100%.
And you're focusing on an outfit that shows them off, as I know I do, because I identified my pin-up many decades ago was Linda Hamilton in Terminator, because Linda Hamilton's arms were... So I've always said, I have to have Linda Hamilton arms, and I have worked pretty hard to get there and achieve that for most of my adult life. But I've actually got better arms at 60 than I had at 30.
Oh, I would totally echo that. I always covered my arms. I would never consider them a thing of beauty or something I wanted to show off. There is another side to it, which is as I went into menopause and got very hot all the time, it was just a blessing to be able to have my arms out. So that was another benefit. But it's just about the freedom and confidence of, I'm not someone who goes around flaunting their body. I'm not going to be flaunting my midriff or anything like that, because I do things that I think are age appropriate, in the sense of I think that I want always to be elegant and dignified at whatever age I am and feeling strong. But it's just this feeling of freedom that it gives you. And I think that again, it's like a ripple effect. If you give off that feeling of power and confidence, I think it's very attractive. It's very strong. I think it draws people to you.
It does.
And I couldn't do that if I was sort of cowering in my body, thinking, I want to hide this bit, and I want to hide this bit, and I don't want to see this bit. And so, just walking in and going, okay, here I am. Yeah, it's strong. It's a statement.
Yeah, without question. And what about the longevity thing? What you, I think you have written in your book that, you know, we can learn from men when it comes to longevity. What is it that we can learn from men?
Yeah, well, that's very simple. It's to do with weight training. So traditionally, weight training, strength training, whatever you want to call it, is something that men have practiced more than women. You know, it was the domain of men in the gym, and it was all about big beefy guys thumping weights on the floor and going like this. And actually, weight training is as if not more applicable to women than it is to men. Why is that? Because over 50, especially over 50, your strength will diminish if you're not working at it. Bone density is the holy grail, because bone density is the opposite of osteoporosis. Osteoporosis is how your bones shatter when you fall. And when people fall over a certain age, again, there is a shocking sort of connection between you falling and the length of time you're likely to live after that. Because you're likely to end up in hospital, and hospital is the beginning, typically, of a downward spiral. So the thing that we should all be aspiring to is bone strength and bone density. And musculature, so when you train in the gym, you are building muscle. Muscle is holding your skeleton together. It's giving you stability. It's giving you strength, so that, you know, if you're on the tube and all of a sudden the tube stops, you don't fall over. You can hold yourself. It's all of those little day-to-day things. You can carry your shopping bags, the equivalent of a farmer's carry. All of this stuff which gives you strength, and the strength contributes to your longevity. Now, traditionally, it's men who focused on strength training. And the question I most often get asked is, am I going to end up looking like a man if I lift weights? And the answer is categorically no. Not unless you're taking steroids, which I would not advise. What you will end up with is strength, is stamina, better bone density, a better shape, better confidence. All of those things and some. And so I would say that what we can learn from men is you do not have to look like a man. You won't look like a man, but you should train like a man. What I mean by that is with the intention of building muscle.
Yeah, I love that.
Have that as your focus and your intent.
Yeah. It reminds me of a story. I have weight trained for most of my life. I enjoy it, and I know my body responds to it. But here is how gyms have changed over the years. When I was in my university years, I used to go to a little gym in a suburban suburb in Melbourne called Hawthorne. And the women's training area was actually cordoned off from the men's gym. And it was about 10% of the space of the men's gym. And we were expected to train separately. And there was one particular weekday where I'd gone in and they said, could you stay within the space and don't come out? We've got a special visitor. And also pointing out, there was probably only about 8 other women in this large membership space who trained with me, all of which were with female field athletes at Olympic level who had probably more testosterone than the guys over the other side of the wall anyway. But the person coming into the gym to train that day was Arnold Schwarzenegger at his best at world champion level. And it was just like, oh my God. And I've never forgotten that day. But I was one of 6 women in a room of about 70 men. And we just, we were just overlooked and don't come out.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was the view.
Do you know what? You've just reminded me. In my the gym I've just left, actually. I'll go somewhere else now. But a few months ago, I'd left. I'd just done my session with my trainer. And he texted me and he said, you'll never guess who's just walked into the gym. So this was a spit and sawdust gym, open 24/7, the cheapest gym in London, but it has great equipment. So not a place you'd expect a celebrity to walk into because it just wasn't posh. It was The Rock.
Oh, wow. Well, that's a hell of a celebrity and one hell of a body.
I couldn't get back in time. I was fully ready to run back down Piccadilly. So, hello, here's my book.
Well, that's probably quite a good segue because you also write about protein being a girl's best friend, and I couldn't agree more. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so, protein is something. So let's go back a step. I think that many of us don't understand, like I didn't, understand food made up of macronutrients, protein, carbohydrate, fat. Contrary to what many diets will tell you, you need all three in your diet. It's not about cutting out all the carbs, I'll go back to that in a minute, or especially not about cutting out the fat. Just for the avoidance of doubt, your brain, to function properly, needs carbohydrate and it needs fat. And it needs cholesterol as well. We'll cover that one off too. But it's the proportions in which you eat these things that matters. And protein is important because protein builds muscle. And what we want is to build muscle. Muscle burns fat. So the protein kicks off the process of building the muscle, which in turn gives you that lovely shape that you've got and holds yourself together and gives you that stamina, but it also burns fat, the excess fat that your body doesn't need. So ideally, and what I do to this day, and probably will never stop, I put my food into an app. I use FitnessPal, and I set myself a macro breakdown every day, how much protein I want to eat, how much carb and how much fat. And as a general rule of thumb, and this is general because we're all different in height, sex, size, etc. If I want to lose weight, I will eat a gram of protein or more per pound of my body weight per day. So at the moment, I want to trim a tiny bit for the summer. I'm eating about 140 grams of protein a day.
Yeah. And I bet you the average Brit and the average Australian would be way under that level.
30 or 40 grams probably,
yeah.
which you should be eating per meal. If you want to maintain your weight, not lose weight, you should be aiming at about 0.35 grams of protein per pound of your body weight. This is a rough number, but reasonably accurate. And that's what I focus on. I focus on the protein. And then I set my carb level slightly below my protein level. And I make sure that there is some fat in my diet. But, and this is the big but, your carbs and your fats need to be healthy examples of those two macros. So when I say carb, I don't mean slices of white bread. And when I say fat, that there are certain fats that are less good for you than, let's say, avocado oil. But I will, for example, eat the fat on a piece of meat. That to me is a good and healthy fat. I'm quite happy to eat that.
Do you eat butter?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, so do I.
Yeah. Don't eat margarine, but I do eat butter.
No margarine.
Again, margarine, highly processed, big no from me. So I think, it's really interesting. And protein is like top of your food chain I think, especially for women of our age. You want to be making sure you're eating protein. And again, when I say that, I don't mean protein bars.
No, because it's processed food.
Bar is fine, but it's processed food. And there's a whole industry that's grown up saying protein rich this, protein rich that. Don't believe what you read on the wrappers. Go to your core sources of protein: meat, fish, poultry, Greek yogurt. Even some fruits and vegetables have high levels. Guava randomly has higher levels of protein. So nuts. So make sure that you are just go back to the core pure source of the food. You can't go
fresh food
too far wrong if you do that. But avoid those packets. And then again, a simple rule. People saying, well, how do I know it's ultra processed? Turn it over and look at the label. If there are more than 5 ingredients you don't understand and know, put it back.
And the difference in what that makes you feel. So historically for breakfast, and sugar was absolutely my addiction, Alison, so there's my declaration. nothing I loved more than an apple muffin with the more crumbly the top, which meant the more sugar it had on it, the better. And I would have that with my almond latte first thing in the morning, which was probably 7 o'clock on the way into the office because I was always early. And by 9 o'clock, I would be starving.
Yeah, your stomach driving you crazy.
It's just empty. But I have the same breakfast every day now, which is sourdough toast, boiled eggs, avocado, feta, fresh lemon juice, and butter on my toast. And it's a generous layer of butter. I'm my father's daughter. And I love that. And I am never hungry if I have had that protein hit for breakfast.
Until well into your lunchtime. Yeah, I totally agree.
Beyond.
Eggs are fabulous. I've eaten eggs every day of my life. And again, people say, what about eggs, cholesterol? No. I mean, there are so many bad ways to affect your cholesterol level. Eating eggs is not one of them. So, I will happily eat 3 or 4 eggs a day. I'm not worried about that.
Same. And if I ever think I've overindulged, I'll whip the yolk out of one and eat the other one intact.
Exactly. Egg whites, liquid egg whites, I use them all the time. Very, very powerful top up in some of my recipes. But no, it's about protein. It's about clean eating. It's about cooking from scratch, but prepping and planning, which will save you time, will save you money. Go back to basics and know that what you put in your body is way more important than what you put on your body in terms of how you want to look and feel about yourself. It starts from the inside out, which is why exercise for me is an external application almost. It's picking up a weight and doing something with it. But the real change is happening with what you're eating in your body.
Yeah. So if you assess from a personal perspective, where's the correlation between mindset and motivation to sustain this state that you've now reached?
It's a really interesting and very complex question because our minds are incredibly clever and play tricks on us and can control us in terrible ways. But I think essentially you have to start from a place where you accept that you are willing to be accountable. And that is you have to get to a place where you're so unhappy with the way that you are that you want to make a change. In other words, if I say to you, I think you need to lose weight, that's not necessarily going to have any impact other than to make you resentful, because me telling you isn't what it's about. You have to wake up in the morning, as I did, as you did, and say, enough. I want to make a change. And so that's number one. And so you have to have that moment. And for that, you have to reach a low point. For every up, there's a low point, and they have their purpose, and that's the purpose. And then it's about consistency and accountability, which I think are massively underrated words. It is so easy to talk about consistency and so hard to do it. And again, I'm not going to say, it's pretty straightforward. You just do this, this, and this. Consistency is not straightforward. It's dull sometimes, but it's not straightforward because it just requires you day in, day out to stick to a plan. And there are so many things to waylay us along the way. You go to a social event and someone says, oh, come on, Alison, don't be a party pooper. Have a drink, for God's sake, Or would you like a canapé? What, you're not eating? Well, you look skinny to me. I think you need to eat. There's all this stuff, and you've just got to be...
Yeah, there might be something else in somebody saying that, because there's a bit of sabotage coming at you.
Absolutely. No, absolutely.
People want to bring you down. They're uncomfortable with your success.
Because you've highlighted that they're perhaps not where they want or need to be.
Yeah.
So I think, consistency and accountability, but then, and that is hard, and there's no way of wrapping that up with a bow. You just have to be prepared to go on that journey. But what I would say is, get someone to support you, somebody who does care about your success. Could be that you take on a trainer for the first part of your journey, because that is, in my opinion, an investment worth making. I know it's money, but if you're going to spend money on something, I'd spend it on that person who is there to hold you accountable.
It's cheaper than processed food.
Yeah. Yeah. Have a training buddy. Have somebody who's interested in food, who's going to be with you on that journey. And I think that those are the important things. But consistent, if you said to me, Alison, just one word, cut out all the other noise, consistency.
And I made a throwaway line there that it's cheaper than processed food, but I would also task anybody to do a price tally of their weekly shop, break it down and understand how much of that goes to processed food or negative calories, and work out what that would contribute to a budget to a personal trainer. And I bet you it goes a long way.
We all spend money on things that we don't need and don't understand, for sure.
There's no question. From where you've come to where you are today, what is a phrase that defines you?
Well, maybe I could answer that a bit differently. What I would like written on my headstone come the day.
In over 40 years from now.
In over 40 years, when I'm done, is she was brave, bold and beautiful. And I don't mean by that physically attractive. I mean the spirit of loving life. Because I think what this journey has given me is a curiosity, a determination. I just feel that my journey is so not done yet. I genuinely feel that I am at the beginning of the best bit, and I am excited about that. And to be able to say at 61 that I wake up and wanting to bounce out of bed and feeling excited is something I never expected. It's the greatest gift.
Yeah, I could not agree more. Alison, your book has just come out, Fit and Fabulous Over 50. Where can we find it? Is it in all the bookstores and all the online platforms to purchase?
It's on Amazon. You can get it as a Kindle or as a hardback. You can get it on my website, AlisonCork.com. And if you type in Fabulous 20, you will get 20% off. And you can buy it as a hardback or a digital download.
Fantastic, fantastic. So I think if somebody is listening to this conversation today, and I have no doubt this is an episode that's going to have more shares than the average, because there will be so many people out there who think they've been defeated, they are done, and they can't improve upon where they find themselves at this stage of life. And that is just a hard no from both of us.
Yep.
If you've got the determination, the aspiration to improve and the drive, you can do it. And we didn't sit here today and say it was easy. It takes commitment, it takes discipline. But one of the most important things that I think you pointed out, Alison, is it's not about somebody else saying you need to do it. It's not your doctor telling you need to do it, or significant other in your life or friends.
Yeah.
You absolutely have to reach a point where you recognise it and are ready to do it for yourself. Otherwise, you're never going to sustain it and make that start, I think.
You owe it to yourself. You absolutely owe it to yourself to be the master of your destiny.
I couldn't say that better myself. Alison, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today.
It's been an absolute
privilege.
Joy.
Yeah, it has indeed. Thank you very much. Please be sure to share this episode with your network and broader group, because I think there's so much in this, particularly for midlife people. It's not just midlife women, midlife people anywhere, but Power of Women kind of has a bit of a bias towards women, and I know Alison is an absolute champion of females, so it it's probably somebody within your friendship group who happens to be a woman or somebody you know who would benefit from this. So please share, please follow us on the socials, jump online to Alison's website and have a look at the book and plug in that 20.
Fabulous 20 is a 20% discount, so
beautiful.
Go for it.
Fantastic. Yeah. Thank you, Alison. Until next time.